Hello, good evening, and welcome to Spectrum Debate number 25. Welcome back after that very short break. Whether you're watching us live on YouTube, Google Plus, or on our website at spectrumdebates.com, you are, of course, very welcome. Tonight, we're going to be debating a variety of topics chosen by our guests, whom we shall meet in just a moment. But as ever, we want to hear your views, and we want you to send in your questions or points to challenge each of our guests. Some of you have already done that. I'll do my best to come back to them. If I don't, please tweet them again. As you know, we're extremely popular. We are obviously the most popular political talk show on this time of a Sunday night on YouTube and Google Plus simultaneously. Maybe it's not a big cohort, but we do our best. But we do get lots of tweets, so if I miss something, please tweet it again. You can do so using the hashtag that you can see on your screens, which is SD25, and I'll do my best to put all of your points to our guests and let the rest of our audience know what you are thinking. If you are watching on Google Plus, you can also use the Applause app, which tells us how much you agree or disagree with what is being said. You might know that better as the Worm. And if I get a chance to do it over at 9 o'clock on SpectrumDebates.com, we'll launch our weekly poll to see who you enjoyed the most from tonight. But without further ado, let me introduce you to our guests. First of all, on my screen from right to left, it's Mr. Leon French, a Conservative from Yorkshire, who's bringing us tonight the great return of the clothes horse, which I've missed from your previous. Good evening, Leon. How are you?
Hello. I'm alright. I just want to point this out. I'm really happy with my logo.
Yes. What does that? Because that actually normally says something. What is it that it says?
It usually says heavy breathing. But I found it, and I
which
don't
is
know,
a lot of people's reaction after the election.
something like that, yeah.
I
think
think
it's quite apt.
a lot of people's reactions when they're watching the show, but okay, let's go with the election. I suppose it's a slightly bigger event. Welcome to you, Leon. Our next guest on my lineup is Matthew Hulbert, former Liberal Democrat councillor from Leicestershire. Good evening, Matthew. How are you?
Hello. Do you have to remind me about my recent loss, Gareth?
I'm so. Well, I could have read out the results, but that would have just been cruel.
Oh, okay. Right, we've started straight away. Okay.
Well, but at least that sorted out the SAS video afterwards.
Anyway, how are you, Matthew? Have you recovered from the grueling election that your party suffered?
I've recovered. I'm going to be a part of the fight back.
Excellent, that's what we like to hear. Your topic is going to be the first one we discuss tonight. Can you tell us what it is, please?
I certainly can. I'm avoiding talking about the Dems just for the moment, and I'm going to talk about the Labour Party and how I feel that none of the candidates declared so far appear to want to admit that they're on the left, if they consider themselves of the left, and I'm just wondering why that is.
Thank you. Our next guest is Daryl Devine, coming to us from Scotland. Good evening, Daryl. How are you?
Hello there, I'm very well, thank you.
Now, it looks like you're already on. I mean, is that cocodamol or something? You're thinking this is going to give you a headache, and here you are straight away on the painkillers.
Just a wee bit, just a wee tinge, you know what I mean?
Fair enough. As long as it's just enough. What is it you're going to be talking about tonight?
Well, I'm hoping to direct the conversation towards the humongous controversy that a few Scottish people decided to clap in the middle of the House of Commons, which, of course, was just an insufferable act that they, unbelievable.
Forgive me, I'm detecting just a hint of sarcasm there, but I'm sure we'll discover later on if that's true.
Maybe.
Nice to see you again. And last but by no means least, returning guest again, it is Adam Keeley, who's coming to us tonight from North Wales. Good evening, Adam. How are you?
I'm not bad. Yourself?
Superb. All the better for seeing you. In one sense, it's a shame, audience, you weren't here for the conversation we had beforehand, but there's no point us rerunning it. All we'll say is that hopefully Adam's mum might make an appearance tonight. And
I hope not.
But anyway, so Adam, you're going to be leading a topic tonight. What is it?
It's going to be the topic I'm leading tonight is why I think the Conservatives are the party of the working.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Well, hello to you all. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been here. So to remind you, I'm Gareth. I'm your host for tonight. And whilst for full disclosure, I am a Conservative, I'll do my best to play devil's advocate and to challenge all of our guests and explore each idea we come for. Our standard disclaimer is that whilst each of our guests may well support a political party, none of them speaks for or on behalf of any party. So please take everything each of us says as being our own personal opinions. But of course, first it is the news. Over the last week or 10 days, we've seen the UK's representative touring Europe's capitals, making countless media appearances, speaking with the movers and shakers in the hope of winning support. However, it was all in vain because in the end we only got 5 points in the Eurovision and Sweden won. The government has made some bizarrely threatening remarks about how you dreadful law-abiding citizens need to be careful, whilst at the same time passing a law on tax promising not to raise it, which is, as we all know, pretty pointless. Please expect further laws that are pointless to be passed, such as the 2016 Internal EU Arguments Act and the imminent bugger, we didn't think we'd have to do all of our manifesto because even we didn't think we'd win the election bill. Labour's leadership contest descended into chaos as everyone seemed to be falling over themselves to prove that they aren't really too much of an old Labour candidate by yelling "Scroungers" and "Destroy the welfare system." Obviously, Len McCluskey hasn't made enough phone calls to them all yet. And as for the Lib Dems, as their 8 MPs prepare for the leadership contest, people were left wondering if the party was just too far on for Tim, or if it would just be a lamb to the slaughter for Norman. I apologise for that. I would have tried harder if they were still a major party. Now, if you'd like to appear here next week or in future, please let us know. Everyone who comes on this show is a volunteer. Very occasionally, they're press ganged. We'd very much welcome you to come on. Let's begin with our first topic tonight, which is introduced by Matthew Hulbert. Off you go, Matthew.
Thanks very much, Gareth. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Labour leadership contest. It seems pretty uninspiring from where I'm sitting, and it would appear to me not only is it uninspiring, but also that all of the candidates declared, at least so far, and this is probably going to be all of the candidates now, none of them seem to want to admit that they are anything to do with the left or even the centre-left. And I was listening to Andy Burnham, who I gather from press reports is the left-wing candidate and is Len McCluskey's favourite, and he was doing all he could on 5 Live this morning to try and suggest that was not the case. And I just think that, you know, parties need to be true to themselves, and I think Labour needs to be true to itself. And I just wonder why they are not being. I mean, I assume it's because they feel that Miliband's tried that and we saw the result of it. But I think that had something to do with Miliband himself, perhaps more than the Labour offer. So I was just wondering what the other panellists felt about that, really.
Okay, so is the Labour Party or are the Labour leadership contenders just not admitting that they're left-wing, or have they decided actually to repudiate it? I'm going to go to you first, Darryl, because it was Scotland where Labour saw their most dramatic change in fortune. How do you think this changed, you know, the way the Labour leadership contenders seem to be positioning themselves will actually go down in Scotland?
It's a very mad way of working, I do have to say that. I mean, in Scotland, the majority holders of the seats are, of course, the SNP, and they're a party who present themselves on a very left-wing ideology. So at the very least, you just have to... I mean, what you think they might do is they might try and look even more left-wing now, despite, you know, their actions being right-wing in the past. You might think they would look at the SNP and go, well, they're winning and they're left-wing, let's appear that. But they just keep dialing in the completely wrong direction, and ignoring what the Labour Party is ostensibly supposed to be, which they were, you know, established as, you know, the working man's party. I mean, they're called Labour, for Christ's sake. They were established by, you know, a working man, and they've just strayed so far from that now in Scotland, of course, they're just called the Red Tories, and they're just considered Tory light everywhere else. So I think it's just the absolute worst marketing move, really, that they could ever make to try and declare themselves even more right-wing. They're listening to David Cameron and the likes of him, who, you know, are like, it's the likes of the Conservatives saying that Labour were too left-wing, which is completely ridiculous. If anything, they're just trying to keep Labour pulled over to the right to try and keep them in the losing position and keep them from challenge them anymore. I mean, You know, I think they just need to go back to the centre or the left and just have a complete evaluation about themselves. You know what I mean?
Thank you very much. Some of our audience seem to be having a few issues with the feed on YouTube. If you can't see us on YouTube, I've also tweeted the link direct to Google Plus where you can watch us, and also you can watch it via Google Plus and YouTube at spectrumdebates.com, which is just down here. So try those if you are having a bit of difficulty watching us on YouTube. Of course, if you're actually able to see that notice that I've just given, there'd have been no point me telling you because you weren't having any trouble. Never mind. Ignore me entirely. Daryl, I'd just like to explore this ever so slightly more because you mentioned it in part, but the general perception in England was that Labour had moved quite a bit to the left under Ed Miliband, whereas in Scotland you're saying actually the perception is they were far too right-wing. Is there any way that a party across the UK is going to be able to marry those two things?
Well, the Lib Dems certainly tried to, and you saw how that turned out. But I know quite a few English people, obviously, and none of them have ever suggested that Labour's too far to the left. I don't think I've ever seen anybody who did that. Ed Miliband just stands next to David Cameron, stood next to Nick Clegg, and he looks exactly the same. He was for austerity. He was for every single one of their policies continuing. There was almost no... Only difference between him and the Conservatives was that he was happy not to kill foxes. That's the only difference I've seen between them.
Okay, a few of our tweets, then I'll come to Leon and Adam. Chris G at Chris G0000 says, if Labour is true to itself, it will lose. Labour leads to win the odd seats south of Birmingham. Salman Anwar at Amazing Anwar, of course, Amazing Anwar. I'm so sorry for doubting that. The deputy leadership election looks more exciting than the actual leadership election, and we've had that said before by someone. Where are we? And over on here, Michael Craig at Michael Craig 96. Labour have a huge problem. 2 left-wing for England, 2 right-wing for Scotland. And David Jeffrey at David Jeffrey _ has found some dreadful phone company who are trying to nick the Spectrum name. This is appalling. And I shall be having immediate words with my legal team, which consults of me and a mirror. Matthew Wilson at Wilson _ Matty. Scotland was still loyal to Labour in the 3 elections that Blair and New Labour won. The implication there being, of course, that they weren't particularly right-wing at that time. Lily Summers at Miss Lily Summers says that actually Andy Burnham isn't left-wing. So don't take it such as that. And she also goes on to say that mainly because the reason for Labour's wins in Scotland under Blair, mainly because there was no alternative for working people to go to. And James at Gaylordside says, carry on, Daryl, I can't wait for the next Tory victory should Labour stay as left as it was under Miliband. Leon, who's right on this?
Nobody.
Well, thank you for that, Leon. Moving on.
No, I just think Labour's a very odd creature because, I mean, really, what does it actually stand for anymore? I don't think it really stands for anything. We know what it's against, but I don't really think it stands for very much. I think it's simplistic to say, oh, well, it's too left-wing or, oh, it's too right-wing. There's none of that. And I don't think even in Scotland, I mean, Daryl would probably know more about this than I, but I don't think in Scotland it was anything to do with left and right. At the end of the day, it was actually Chris Keane who said it a few weeks ago in our partisan debate that what a lot of people saw was Labour campaigning with the Tories. That just sort of cemented an image, I think, for many people. And I think Chris G has said on Twitter as well, people don't vote SNP because they're left-wing. At the end of the day, as I think Darren Grimes has also said on Twitter, they were, until recently, known as Tartan Tories. They vote for the SNP because they look the most anti-establishment in Scotland, and for people who think in Scotland who think that it's been ignored by the establishment, Tories, Labour, everyone, for too long, they're going to go to the anti-establishment one. It just happens to be at the moment that's the SNP.
Thank you very much. There go my guests reading out some of the best tweets that I've not got round to. It's actually helpful, though. Thank you very much indeed. Joe Pattinson at Joe _ Pattinson says, Andy and Yvette are tarnished by the Blair-Brown administration. Liz and Mary aren't. Yet people will be likely to think, who are they? We carry on with Henry at Talking Henry, says he's watching the show. What a lovely jumper shirt combo. I'm not sure who's talking about there, but it's not me because I'm only wearing one of those things. What a shame. Someone's not. Is it you, Daryl?
Maybe,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, Daryl has the compliment tonight. We'll go with that. Darren Grimes at Darren Grimes _ also says the Liberal Democrats have always been in the centre. What is this person talking about? Joshua Kerridge at Joshua Kerridge 1. Oh, stop with the austerity cries. We haven't even seen it yet. Matt Green, Matt Jack Green 98. Labour will never win in seats in the Essex, Kent regions, etc. if they do not adopt a centre or centre-right agenda. A rap-up at Stradihuvius. Brilliant.
Was it
No,
got a
I
new
hated,
name?
on a completely different topic, I hated that song before I saw it live. A right-wing party actually won the election. I suspect that's a stronger influence on the candidates than the SNP. Thomas Smith at Smudge Thomas, Labour's biggest problem is that there are fewer and fewer places in the whole kingdom where most people will vote for them. And Nathaniel Higgins, if Labour becomes more right-wing, what is the point of them? And Alessia at Upon a Cloud, the cat really looks like you, Leon. But seriously, I think Labour were not left-wing enough, and people voted for the real deal. Adam, what do you make of this?
Sorry. Well, I think Andy Burnham is actually, well, he's got the support of the union, so I've actually got left-wing, so that kind of kills Lily's little quote. But what I presume is, what I'd say is that he's also a Blairite, and he may appeal weirdly to the people who were voting both UKIP and the Tories in the last election. Labour lost the working class vote to UKIP, and they lost the middle class vote to the Tories. So, weirdly, even though they actually got 1 million more votes and increased their vote share by 1%, they still lost a lot of support. So I'd say that, well, personally, I wouldn't favour either of any of the candidates for Labour leadership, because I think that if we have a woman, then we can't say that Margaret Thatcher's been the only female leader in the country, which is unfortunate. And if we have Andy Burnham, then Labour will possibly have a chance of doing successful in the future under his leadership, only because I'm sure they can sandwich without the press looming over possibly. I personally, if I was a member of the Labour Party, I would vote for Andy Burnham, but I don't like any of them because I'm a Tory.
So do you think that Andy Burnham is the most credible candidate for Labour to choose in terms of them being able to actually make a concerted fight back in 2020?
Oh yeah, got more of a fight back on them. Well, I'd say they've got more of a fight on them back on them than the Lib Dems, but that's not true. I think that I'd say Andy Burnham is the most credible leader. Yvette Cooper, the best thing to do with her is that if she wins, then Ed Balls will move into Downing Street. Liz Kendall, I've actually seen her on Question Time when it was in Llandudno, which I was on, and I didn't like her at all. And Mary Cray, I've never really heard of her, so I can't really comment on her. But everyone else, I would say, well, they're all rubbish, but Andy Burnham is probably the best candidate.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen at home, if you have heard of Mary Cray, please tweet us. It seems to be an ongoing issue. It seems only 5 Labour MPs have actually heard of her, and so we'll see. Of course, Andy Burnham did just a matter of hours ago get over the 35 mark he needed, so he's the first confirmed candidate in the leadership election. Will Mary Cray find another 30? Leon, from your point of view, who do you think would be best for the Conservatives?
Oh God, all of them. They're all useless. I personally, if I was David Cameron and I had to face one of them over the dispatch box, I think the one I wouldn't like, and I don't know why this is, but I've forgotten the name. Yvette Cooper, that's the one. I would not want to debate her, and I don't know why. I just think she comes across as quite tough. And I don't think she'd pull any punches. Andy Burnham, I have no opinion, I don't care. I actually think if the Labour Party was serious about being elected again, I think they'd go for Liz Kendall. But, of course, the Labour Party being Labour, they'll do a Labour and they'll vote for the one that won't win them anything. Because that's what Labour do.
Can I say something quickly?
Yeah, go on.
I don't think that, well, I think actually Yvette Cooper, I do actually like her, but I don't at the same time. Liz Kendall has got about as much leadership qualities as Ed Miliband did, which isn't very much. The only thing that she appeals to some people is that because she's a female. And all Labour went on about, well, Harry Harman went on a lot about in the last election, was the fact that Labour can attract female votes. Well, that didn't pan out very well, obviously. So
I don't think the female factor is as big an issue, but I think one thing that makes me think quite highly of her is the fact that she recognises the problems with Labour, and I think she's the only candidate who genuinely believes. I mean,
well, she's actually. Did you know this?
Sorry?
Wasn't it?
Adam was about to give us. Hang on one moment, Adam, you were about to give us a revelation there, and then you disappeared. So let me come back to you. Did you know? Please continue that sentence.
Oh, did you know that Greg Davis is going out with Liz?
Oh, I don't know who Greg Davis is.
Very tall comedian. He was the head of Sixth Form.
Him. Yeah. Oh,
Wasn't it Labour?
All our pop culture here on Spectrum Debates.
I got confused there.
Wasn't it Labour that had that big giant pink bus that said "Vote for us if you're a woman"? By the way.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
They need somebody to help them with their marketing, right? It doesn't like. It would be better if it was an actual woman, because she could probably tell them, no, this is going to make me feel sick if I have to look at this. Because, you know, I mean, I'm not really sure what her position would be as a leader, but definitely I think that having, you know, a more strong-headed woman who won't pull something like that is definitely going to help them out.
The consensus on our timeline appears to be that nobody knows who Mary Cray is. If anyone has heard of Mary Cray or found her somewhere, please let us know. There are people worried about her, and they'd like to know if she's still willing to stand as Labour leader. Matthew, now we've heard a few criticisms of Liz Kendall, but my understanding is sources tell me that you've been on a panel with Liz Kendall, because of course she's not far from you, is she? She's a Leicester MP.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a few years ago now, and it was a panel organised by Unlock Democracy, and it was around the time of the very unsuccessful AV referendum. And yes, I was on a panel with Liz Kendall. I mean, I thought she was all right.
What were you on that night?
She went before the end of the event, which I wasn't all that impressed by. I must admit, I didn't sit there thinking this is potentially a future Labour leader. And if I was still a Labour member, because of course I was at one time, I certainly wouldn't be voting for her. I'd probably be voting for Andy Burnham, even despite the fact that he seemed to be flip-flopping in a lot of his opinions when he was pressed on the radio earlier today. But I think, you know, as has been pointed out earlier on, Labour have got a real problem, haven't they? I mean, you know, they are having their vote eaten into every which way round. And I know that my party at the moment is at a low ebb, but we will come back, and we are now in opposition, and we will start gaining support again. And so that will be another party that potentially eats away from their vote. I think Labour as a potential party of government are in real serious trouble, and regardless almost of who the next leader is, they need to have a proper sit down and proper think about who they are and what they stand for and what they need to do if they're ever again going to be a party of government.
The thing is with Labour is there are so many parties on the left of politics in the United Kingdom, especially the ones in the TV leaders debate. You know, you have the Greens, Plaid Cymru, the SNP, and Labour, who really are parties on the left. You have the Lib Dems, who have been incredibly whatever the word is, by the SDF, by the Social Democratic Party, and then you've got the Tories on the right. You had four parties on the left, and it's an incredibly it did split the left-wing vote in a way, because Plaid Cymru did gain a lot of momentum in constituencies such as Ynys Môn and Llanelli from Labour, and I think they'll go further next year and target them again. But I think it's going to be a battle in all elections next year over the Volve.
Thank you very much. We have some breaking news tonight here on Spectrum Debates. Apparently, according to sources, in particular Matt Green at MattJackGreen98, and James at Gaversite, and somebody else, and Joseph at Joseph D. Cassidy, Liz Kendall and Greg Davis are no longer an item.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to break that news to you. Apparently, perhaps they are now in between partners. Anybody? No?
That was a
High
crap
five?
joke.
I know, I'm full of them tonight. I'm so sorry. So moving swiftly on, Matthew, Daryl, any final comments on the Labour leadership before we move on?
Could I just say very quickly?
Okay, well, you're neither of those two people, but please do go ahead.
Well, no, but there was a silence, so I thought I might as well take advantage. I do love a good leadership election, and I was actually quite looking forward to us having one. To be quite honest. And I love leadership elections because it's the only time that these people become honest and say, actually, yeah, we were a bit crap, weren't we? Why did they never say it?
Well, fully enough, Leon, when Andy Burnham was on the radio earlier today, he was pressed on some of the issues that he'd allegedly flip-flopped over, and his response to that was, well, I've always been very loyal to Labour, and so whatever the leader at any one time says, I agree with them.
It's such a cop-out. And that's another problem of mine with the Labour Party, and I think it's in the front of the book by Robin Harris, The Conservatives of History, and it actually has part of a letter from, I think, an MP, a Labour MP who resigned from a cabinet position or something. I can't remember what. I could tell you, but I can't be bothered. And he said something along the lines of, I'm completely loyal to Labour, I'll always owe Labour my life, and this, that, and the other. And it sounded a bit culty, to be honest. And then it said, you would never get a Conservative talking like that. And it's quite true. They're very... I don't know, I just find Labour to be quite an odd being.
Well, it reminds me, Leon, of the now Labour leader in Australia, a certain Mr. Bill Shorten, who a while back when Julia Gillard was Labour leader, was on the Australian version of Sky News and was asked about a particular speech that Julia Gillard had made. And he said that he hadn't heard it, but that whatever he said, he agreed with it.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yes, if I remember correctly, that was over the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who they were relying on for their majority. Okay, we're just kind of coming to the end of this topic now, unless anyone else here wants to add anything. A couple of the things people have mentioned online. James E. Arrowsmith at Arrow Jam. Yvette Cooper strikes me as the most competent candidate. However, Ed Balls could be a skeleton in the closet. I do hope we're not suggesting she's done away with him. That would just be embarrassing.
Would have been a good thing, though.
Yeah, we do not condone murder on this show. Not even of people who lose elections. So that should please you, Matthew.
It's all kicking off here, isn't it?
So someone else here has pointed out, where are we? I've lost it. I know. I lost it a long time ago. Chris at All Riff No Raff says, for your information, Mary Cray is the Labour MP who claimed that Thomas the Tank Engine is sexist, so she'd be perfect for leader. I think Matty Wilson also reminded us of that. And where are we? Oh, yes. Chris G says the full range of the leftist parties will be invited to the TV debates in 2020. The Tories splitting the left-wing vote since 1983.
Can I just have a word?
Yes, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, of course, that there is another leadership election going on, which is far
but no
more...
one cares about that one.
Far more inspiring and far more energetic and far more fizzing with ideas, and that is, of course, the Lib Dem leadership.
It's none of those things.
And just in case you don't follow me on Twitter and are unaware of my...
Let me stop you for a moment, because, as we know, we like to break news on this show. We like to break news that nobody has heard before, and this will be a great shock to anyone who well, just to anyone really. Matthew, who is it that you are backing for the Lib Dem leadership?
I am backing Tim Farron,
MP
for Westmoreland and Lonsdale up in Cumbria.
You're backing
Yeah, one a day.
My good friend Tim, and he is going to win. And he'll take us back to being what the Lib Dems should be, apart from the 5 past years of aberration, and that is a liberal centre-left party, and that's what we'll be.
That never holds power and doesn't actually change anything. Good news. That's great. Let me hold you there, because I did say we'd move on to the next topic, and I'm very happy at the end to come back to the issue of Lib Dem leadership. But let's move on to our next topic. I'm going to come to you, Daryl, to change the pace on this one, because this is an interesting one. So Daryl, the floor is yours.
Well, recently, of course, there was this mild to moderate to absolutely severe controversy where the SNPs kind of disregarded the common tradition and had the gall to clap to one of their speeches in the House of Commons. And there was a lot of backlash about this from the people who ran the House of Commons, and a lot of supporters of the Conservatives and the British government in general, saying that the Scottish MPs are coming in there and they're completely disregarding tradition, and they're just coming in there and, you know, what I find really ridiculous about this is the fact that how many things are acceptable in the House of Commons, because they're harking on people clapping in there. Have they ever seen what goes on in there? Anytime I've tried to watch that, I can't hear anybody talking, because all the party leaders are having to shout over each other. And all the MPs are screaming and jeering and shouting, and I've heard that they're allowed to say "hear, hear" when they agree with somebody, but they constantly jeer that to the point you can't hear anything. Of course, there was that time when they all started making cow noises for some strange reason, and you know, all the other activities that go on in the House of Commons, you know, like illegal committees and blackmail and paedophilia, you know, all that's all right to an extent, as long as you don't talk about it, you know. But if you clap in there, then, you know, you'll get that guy sitting in the centre throne, you'll get him very angry, and you'll get him to shout at you. His name escapes me at the moment, although I know he was a former Conservative. He just drives me mad, because he takes...
Bercow.
What?
John Bercow.
Yeah, him. The guy that, you know, wears his nice wig and he tells everybody to come forth and shout at him.
The man who's vertically challenged.
I don't know what the case with that guy is, but he is kind of the pinnacle of this kind of side of government that takes tradition and old customs far too seriously, and I think there is way too much importance placed on tradition and sort of, you know, conservatism and running things a certain way that the British government and the British people, to an extent, can't really get over. I mean, you just need to look at the royal family to see how much, you know, people are sticking up for really impractical situations just because we did them for a long time. You know what I mean? So I think there is a real level that we have to overcome here. And I think when people are just going crazy at people for clapping in the Commons, I think you're taking the whole level of tradition too far.
Thank you very much indeed. Adam, I get the feeling you might have some feelings about the tradition of the House of Commons.
You may be right. I just want to say this now to you, Darryl. Basically, the House of Commons is the House of Commons. If you don't like it, sod off back to Hollywood, okay? Because it is tradition of our United Kingdom. If you don't like that, then you should have voted for independence. Wait, you did. Let me finish. I listen to you. Okay. Now, there has only been since 2007 3 times which people have clapped. Okay. In the House of Commons. Okay. The one in 2007 was when Tony Blair left. That was an exception because he was Prime Minister and he was leaving. The second one was a few months ago when John Bercow was getting ridiculed in the House of Commons and someone stood up for him. And the third one is when the SNP clapped the other day. And when the SNP claps, it shows that they're disrespecting the traditions of our United Kingdom in the House of Commons. It's the House of Commons that has brought democracy over to our country, has brought democracy through the Parliament, has created loads of stuff and all that. And I think for the SNP just to not really give a damn, I'm going to say something else then, not really give a damn over the traditions of the House of Commons, it just shows that they want to shake things up. And to be honest, I want to shake things up. I want to get the 56 Scottish seats to be blue, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So I would 59 seats. That's a correction there.
I do.
59. So basically, my message is, I think the traditions of the House of Commons are the right the House of Commons, and if the SNP don't like it, sod off back to Hollywood.
Well, I do understand what you're saying, right? Because it is important to have a certain level of etiquette within a House of Government to maintain civil behaviour. It's not like they're urinating in the middle of the bloody Commons. And the thing I just can't stand is, have you ever watched it when there's a load of people in there? All they do is scream at each other. And if anything, I would put in a rule, a very patronising primary school rule that's let one person talk at a time. You all get to say what you can say. I mean,
wow.
We don't run this programme, you know, everybody's shouting and, you know, one person trying to shout over the next. If anything, if Clapton's their biggest concern, it's just the fact that there's so much going there. And the other fact is that governments and people have to evolve. I mean, that's just the entire Bainey life. Things have to change and turn over and evolve. Things cannot just remain a fixed fact forever. I mean, the House of Commons have done a lot of good things, also done a lot of absolutely terrible things, and that's why we have to embrace the good things and, you know, push them forward into the future and change and evolve into things.
Thank you. We've had a very helpful tweet on this one, a series of tweets, in fact, from Chris G, who says that from a 1998 House of Commons report, this was during the big period after Blair won, when he was trying to, you know, modernise and change, you know, everything. There is a danger that such a practice, clapping, might be open to abuse and could lead in certain circumstances to orchestration of what would amount to standing ovations, with a success or failure of a speech being judged not by its content but by the relative length of the ovation at the end.
Yeah.
Is that not, Daryl, a perfectly practical reason why people going, yeah, is better than how long do we need to clap for, lads, to show that we've won this?
Well, I do see that area of it. I do see it potentially being up to abuse. For example, deliberately clapping for about 10 minutes just so that the other party can't get their say. But perhaps, you know, you could work within that and put restrictions on that. For example, you know, like ridiculously minute laws such as you cannot clap for more than 10 seconds or something like that. Because, as I say, as it stands, the amount that they jeer here at each other, you can't hear a single thing anyway. So I would work in fixing that. If we're going to have no clapping, then we're going to have nobody shouting at themselves anymore either.
Thank you very much. A few of the other comments before I ask Leon and Matthew to come in on this one. We've got the real Flynn Shady at Craig_Greenday. I think the SNP tried to start off back to Holyrood but got turned down. Matty Wilson at Wilson_Matty also points out that it's not exactly Daryl's fault that the referendum went the wrong way from his point of view.
Yeah, it is.
Joseph at Joseph D. Cassidy, Scottish people should just sit down and shut up if they don't like something, is basically the summary of that statement that you've just made, Adam. Joseph Hudson Small at Joe Hudson Small, I agree that the tradition is regarded too highly in the Commons and actually puts people off politics when they see it. We've got there's so much on this one. We like talking about traditions, don't we? Joseph continues, I don't understand why tradition is regarded as positive. It's basically unfounded assumption that leads to a number of problems. Lily says that she agrees with what you've said, Daryl. Hear, applause.
He wouldn't.
Where are we? What else have we got? So there's quite. Oh, here we are. Lee Darg, at Lee Darg. My first time seeing Spectrum, and the level of debate is at one person telling them to sod off. Is it usually better than this? Well, it's every show is different and uniquely. So hopefully, there we are. Alex Ward at Mr. Alex Ward. You're out of touch. I'm out of time. Famous quote by Hall & Oates on the Westminster parliamentary system. Cameron S at Cameron_surname. Not urinating yet. First clapping. Who knows what next? James Arrowsmith. The House of Commons is a very strange place. A confused ninja. Hey! A confused ninja. I don't think the behaviour in the House of Commons is to be approved of, but this is just a petty debate when we actually need radical reform. And Chris G says, clapping isn't the Speaker's biggest concern. His concern is in keeping order. 10-minute standing ovations after every speech would not be great. Henry at Talking Henry, clapping can be misused, but so can jeering. And James at Gaylorsight, I defy anyone to say European parliaments are better after watching the dull, non-adversarial footage of those. Okay, Matthew, where are you on this one?
Well, I mean...
Well, I think you're frozen on this one, so I'm going to come to Leon until you unfreeze. Leon, where are you on this one?
First, I quite like the traditions of the House of Commons. I do think the no clapping rule, I think it helps with debate. I understand, though, that, you know, instead you get the jeering and the hear, and apparently moos as well, moo. But I'm quite fond of, I was reading about it on the train back up to Hull the other day, actually, and I was reading there's also the comparison that it was the case when Stalin was in charge of the Soviet Union. standing ovations would go on for ages because nobody wanted to be the first person to stop clapping. Now, that's not saying that clapping is communism, but clapping is communism. No, I don't know. It's not really I don't know. I just don't have much opinion on it. I don't care, to be quite honest. But one thing I will say is, I think the SNP are deliberately being childish because they were told about this. They were generally told about this in their induction week, or whatever they call it. And a Tory MP said, we generally don't clap in the Commons. There's no rule on it, but we generally don't, for whatever reason. And then the SNP MPs clapped him. If that's the sort of childish stuff, really. And, yeah, that.
Thank you. We are waiting for Matthew to rejoin us. He has obviously had a connection issue, and he'll be back in a moment. A couple of the other comments here. Cameron S. is pointing out that tradition is not anti-progression, in his opinion. And Chris at All Riff No Raff, the Queen is still the Queen, hands off, and you don't clap in the Commons. The world continues to turn. Joe Hudson Small says the Speaker would just put an end to clapping after a few moments. Who won isn't relevant until MPs actually vote. Salman Anwar, oh yeah, because saying hear hear is unnatural, but being allowed to clap for a certain amount of time is perfectly normal. Darren Grimes thinks you've been great tonight, Leon. I'm sure that's because you actually mentioned him.
Yay!
Alex Ward, Mr. Alex Ward, I'm confused. Is there a drinking game that I'm meant to be following tonight? I think, I don't know, it's a good point. If anyone would like to suggest rules for a Spectrum drinking game, please let us know.
I just drink after every breath.
Fair enough, fair enough. So yeah, that's Darryl's rule. He just drinks after every breath. And there we are. Nathaniel Higgins, clapping is communism. That's a good one. Chris G. Matthew brilliantly captured the Lib Dems' contribution to political debate in 2015 there. Oh, right, by disappearing. Okay, I see. That's a bit harsh.
Meow.
Joe Hudson Small, rules to ensure etiquette are great. Upholding traditional rules without reason is not. Matthew, welcome back. What's your take on the whole clapping tradition thing?
I'm sorry, how much did you hear of what I originally said?
Nothing. You sort of said, well, what? It was along the lines of, well, what I'd like to say is...
Apologies for that. I had a bit of a technical error. I just wanted to say that there seems to be a little bit of snobbery going on, whereby the establishment doesn't like the fact that the SNP have won in the numbers that they have. And it seems to me that this issue of the clapping is a representative of that. Dan Hodges, and I don't normally agree with his articles, but he had a really good article on this week when he said that people seem to be bemoaning the fact that the SNP are treating the place like they own it. And he said, well, maybe that's because, to a certain extent now, they do. They want almost all of Scotland's seats. And they have been sent to Westminster to shake the place up, not there to necessarily agree with conventions. And the whole point about conventions is that they're not laws, they're not rules, they are conventions. And, breaking news, folks, conventions can be changed. Now, I watched some of the first few days of Parliament last week, and the clapping that was being done by the SNP, who I, by the way, disagree with on the issue of independence, but I'm trying to be fair to them, was very brief. It was after the maiden speeches of their colleagues, very good maiden speeches, it has to be said, in most cases. And it wasn't going on for minutes. It wasn't really disrupting the place. And so I thought Speaker Bercow's ruling, and I'm normally a fan of his, but I thought it wasn't his finest moment. And to be fair to the SNP, and I mean, we'll see if this carries on over the next 5 years. Maybe it won't. But during most of the debates that I saw of the Commons last week, they were there in greater numbers than were either the Labour or Tory benches. So, let's just stop this inverted snobbery. The SNP won in Scotland. We've got to get used to that, folks. They're going to be there for 5 years at least, and conventions are there to be changed, and we shouldn't forget that, Adam.
Why should the UK Parliament respect someone who actually wants? Why should the UK actually respect someone who wants to leave it? And all they did months in the referendum.
Adam, are you saying their election is less?
Hang on. He probably would say it, but he hasn't quite finished his point. Go on, Adam. No, I think his mum came in. Right, carry on, Matthew.
So I'm not even at home. I think, what I'm trying to say is Matthew, is when there is a party that, yes, won all but 3 Scottish seats in the general election this year, it doesn't matter about that. Yes, it's great. It's democracy. It's fantastic. They've come into the Commons now, extra 50 of them. But at the end of the all 18 months of the referendum campaign, all they did was take the mick out of the establishment, the main 4 parties, because apparently UKIP were the main party, even though at the time they didn't even have 1 seat, let alone the one they've got now. All they did was take the mick out of all the parties. Why should we say to them, yeah, it's all right, okay, sorry, we can class now in the House of Commons because you got an extra 6 seats, although you want to leave, and all you did was take the mick out of every single person in Parliament by saying they're all...
Adam, and I mean, you know, to a certain extent, it's not for me to defend the SNP, but I think there's a broader principle here. The fact is that you again almost brushing aside the fact that they won, that they have a mandate to be there in the numbers that they do, that they've supplanted, sadly, of course, from my perspective, the Lib Dems as the 3rd party in Westminster. And, you know, conventions are conventions. They can be changed, and new conventions can be formed. And, you know, I have to say, I'm afraid I found your taking whatever off back to Holyrood mildly offensive.
I respect that.
Hang on, Adam. I don't want to have to get on with the mute button here, but I'm going to in a moment.
One at a time, kids.
Daryl.
Well, I'll just say one sentence. The SNP themselves haven't mentioned independence for about 8 months since September. They've kind of tried to move on from that, and it's everybody else that's trying to say to them, you want it away once, and now you're here, why should we listen? It's everybody else that's saying that, not them.
Thank you very much. Leon?
I mean, I really think this is a minor issue. I mean, Clarendon doesn't particularly offend me. I just quite like the traditions of the Commons. And I agree with what you're saying, Matthew. At the end of the day, the SNP won. It's simple as that. They won people over in Scotland. So, of course, they have the right to be there. And it was quite nice to see them in the seats when most of the rest of the chamber was empty, practically. It was nice to see them there doing work. So I don't think anyone can talk them down on that basis, because they're clearly there and doing the job. But for me, it's like I say, they've started as they mean to go on. It's kind of what it looks like to me when they said we generally don't clap in the Commons, so please don't, and then they clap. It's what you do in primary school. It's childish.
Thank you. A few of the comments that people have made at home so far, and again, quite a lot here. Michael Craig, at Michael Craig 96. As a Tory, it's a great shame that nearly every SNP MP was there to witness their maiden speeches, but very few Tories. Rapapap at Stradiuvius. I think sometimes some of you do this deliberately. If clapping is a convention, the SNP are challenging it, but their silence on issues like the Snoopers Charter suggests they're a bit pathetic. Where are we? Some people... Chris G. Conventions survived because they proved useful. The SNP wasn't sent to Westminster to massage Alex Salmond's ego with applause. Joe Pattinson, the 56 have just lacked class so far. Doesn't deserve respect if they carry on as they are doing. Councillor Charles Fifield at Charles Fifield. Colleague of mine. Good chap. SNP ideology is opposed to UK government. Their raison d'etre at Westminster is to get as much publicity as possible and to cause chaos. And several people here are wanting to give standing ovations for you, Daryl, including Nathaniel Higgins, who had previously also said that he was, if he'd been on, he would have said everything Matthew had said so far. So we get a nice mixed bag from our viewers there.
Always do.
Final points then before we go on to our last topic. Matthew.
Thank you. Having defended the SNP, I will now say where I find them, well, I'm going to say it, a bullying and quite intimidating force, and that's how they've been towards Alistair Carmichael this week. Now, I think he would admit that what he did in allowing the leaking of that note before the election was wrong, and he's not taken his ministerial severance pay as kind of a punishment to himself for that. But the way online and elsewhere that some, at least in the SNP, have behaved has been absolutely disgraceful. So I defend the SNP on one hand, but I also see that their behaviour, to a certain extent, on another issue, is disgraceful.
What issue would that be?
Can I?
Daryl and Matthew, just to finish off on this topic. Daryl.
I was just asking them what issue have they been disgraceful with?
This is the issue of the note of what Nicola Sturgeon apparently said in reference to wanting the Tories to win the election rather than Labour winning, and the harassing of Alistair Carmichael, I think, has been absolutely unacceptable, and I hope he sticks to his guns in remaining the MP up there for Orkney and Shetland.
Daryl, do you want to close this topic?
No, let's go on to the next.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you all for your comments on that one. Our final topic then, which Leon and Adam are going to go first, which is whether the Conservatives are really the Workers' Party. Adam.
Well, the more the Working Party than the Liberal Democrats, Matthew, considering they've got much more seats than they have in Parliament, just represents that they wanted them more than the Liberal Democrats. And let's just say that now. How is your ward any? Oh wait, you got beaten up.
Meow.
On to the actual topic, please.
Let's do the topic. Yeah, let's do the topic. Right. Okay. Are the Conservatives the party of the working people? Yes, completely. That's what I agree with the most. Is what Rob Halton said. Is that the Queen's speech will be the Queen's speech of that reflects that the Conservatives are the party of the working people. There's a huge reason for that. There was the abolition. George Osborne announced the abolition of the jobs tax for employers for under 21s. And that has had a huge impact on employment for youth and business. Well, we've seen businesses continue to grow. We have seen investment grow. We've seen the business. We saw business figures before have continued to go up. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands now growing. A huge amount of jobs being created every day. I think the figure was around 1,000, give or take a few, and a lot of them, about 75% of them, are full time. When it comes to 0-hour contracts and when it comes to food banks, there are still a lot of people unemployed, and we are doing as much as we can to tackle that. The job is not finished, and I believe that they can go on with the long-term plan that they've got.
You just hashtags, that's your first warning. No political hashtagging.
And the long-term economic plan, I think...
Where's that mute button?
Can I just say quickly, I do think that the amount of people using food banks isn't great, but I still think there are a lot of people unemployed, and they are the ones who use banks. We are trying to help unemployed getting to work, as we have with 2 million jobs created since 2015.
Thank you very much. Leon, your comments on this topic?
I think for us to really cement ourselves as the Workers' Party or the Working Party, or whatever you want to call it, I think we don't just have to do it in terms of policy. You can do any sort of good policy, but if the imagery isn't good, it won't make an ounce of difference. So I think the Conservative Party needs to change the way it works, and it does things itself as well. And I think anyone who has had a half-second glance over my Twitter feed or my Facebook will realise I have massive problems with the Conservative Party and the way it does things. I wasn't particularly fond of how we did the election. I wasn't fond of it at all, actually. And one thing that does reassure me is the fact that we've got Rob Halfon as deputy chair of the party, which I think could only mean good things for the party, to be honest.
Thank you very much. A few of the comments people have made online so far. The question being, is the Conservative Party the Workers' Party? Salman Anwar at Amazing Anwar. Well, the country thinks so. That was my version of an emoji. Yeah, I think it was that emoji. That's fine. Alessia, love this topic. The answer is yes. Open a history book once in a while. Alex Ward, I'm a Tory. I do as little work as possible. Does that settle the argument?
Cheers for that. You've got the reputation of the party. Great. Cheers, Alex.
Calm yourself, Adam. Calm yourself.
Join the Labour Party. They've probably done a good day's work. And
calm your passions, darling.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to use a ruder word. Chris G, the Conservatives are the Workers' Party in the sense that more people get to work under the Conservatives. Henry at Talking Henry, the party of working people. What about the disabled people unable to work that they've screwed over? Salman Anwar again, I think even Labour realise they're no longer the party of working people. Lily Summers at Miss Lily Summers, living standards have remained stagnant for the last 5 years and the Tories are set to hit the most vulnerable with £12 billion worth of welfare cuts. Salman Anwar, I'm a long-term economic fan. Oh, I just sort of read out a hashtag, but it was a joke one, so that's fine.
It hurt me a little bit when I read it.
I know, I'm sorry. Where are we? Wrap up. I'm going to end up singing that. Generalisation of working people as a demographic is wildly inaccurate. Describing any party as representing them is misleading. Matthew Wilson, I want to move away from being a European party that is associated as the Workers' Party, given the history, mainly in Germany, 1940. Lee Darg, annoyed that the Tories and Labour are fighting over working people. What about those who can't? £12 billion of cuts aren't helping them. Chris at All Riff No Raff, Conservatives are getting people into work. Just as I was reading it, he deleted it. So there we are. Here we are. Chris G. Only one party talks about scroungers on the dole, and that's Caroline Flint. 8% unemployment in 2010, 5.5% today. Salman Anwar is quite happy that Anna Soubry is in the cabinet, and I shall come back to those other comments in a moment. Matthew.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say that if the Tories are the party of working people, why are they trying to restrict workers' rights? And why has every Tory government in history tried to restrict workers' rights and tried to restrict the power of trade unions who represent working people? So that's the first point. I'd also just point out that Liberals were defending workers' rights before Labour were ever heard of, and we continue to very strict.
Have we gone again?
You just died.
Well, what a shame.
We've gone again.
Well, since there's a new silence, could I take advantage of it very quickly?
Well, be very quick, but then it's Daryl's go. Go on.
I'll be quick. I'll answer it in one word.
Go on.
No.
I mean, that's fairly clear. That's fairly clear. But Daryl, is it not quite? I mean, it's quite an important point, isn't it? Because surely the number of people in work has never been higher. The number of people who are out of work is lower now than it has been for quite a long time, considering we had a massive crash. And is that emphasis on work and on reducing taxation so people in work pay less and less tax? Is that not a party that's on the side of working people?
No.
Fair enough. Is that, what would you say would make a party one that's on the side of working people?
Don't give them slave labour. Give them something to live for.
Slave labour?
But to an extent, yes. Because what is actually the point of working if not to have enough? Have enough respect for yourself and have enough money for yourself to be able to live your life in a suitable way without having to rely on handouts or food banks or any of that. True, unemployment technically might have gone down, but the abundance of 0-hour contracts and restrictions and freedoms and all that stuff has resulted in perhaps maybe there is more work going on, but it doesn't seem to be very good work, at least very well-paying work.
That's not slave labour.
Well, no, legally it's not slave labour, no, but that is, a phrase used to describe pretty terrible conditions that they've put on people.
Very dishonest as well.
Well, if you want to call it that, right, it's just a phrase I'm using to refer to the fact they're not helping anybody. They're just pushing people into different terrible conditions. Before they couldn't get any work, now they're in some sort of work that they still have to subsidise with other things that the Tories are also trying to cut down upon. For example, the 12 billion that are trying to cut down on, the majority of which go to people who are in work and have to receive subsidies to get by.
Is it not preferable, Daryl, that people who are in work, instead of being in work, paying tax and then receiving benefits, just don't pay tax? Is it not better to swap in-work benefits for keeping your salary? And isn't that the great Lib Dem idea from the last Parliament?
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the credit for that.
You know me, Matthew. I try to be fair.
Try.
No, I just think it's just common sense. Just give them enough money to live by without having to scrounge a livable, just about livable amount of money off of the government, instead of having to go here, there, and all around to just try and find a way to live. Just have it mandated that they're given enough money to live at the place where they perform work and labour.
In fairness, I'm not necessarily against a living wage.
You'd have to be a pretty evil person to be against it.
Hey, hang on, can I just ask, and we'll come back to your point in a moment, Matthew, but I don't know if someone could answer this for me, because this whole thing about living wage versus minimum wage, surely the whole point of a minimum wage was this is the minimum you need in work in order to make work pay, in order to survive.
Exactly.
And yet, a living wage would not be, the living wage that is proposed is not at a level that means all in-work benefits could be scrapped. So is it not just a higher minimum wage?
Yeah, it is.
To an extent,
but Gareth, for too many people, the minimum wage has become the maximum wage, and that's the truth, and that's why many people, including me, campaign for companies where they can afford it to pay the living wage. Apologies, I seem to be having some technical issues tonight, so I don't know how much of you heard of my original answer to this question.
Give us a go. Go on.
Well, basically, first of all, I wanted to say hello to. I've tried this 3 times now. Say hello to my friend Lee Dark, who I know is watching. Hello, Lee. I just wanted to say that if the Tories are the party of working people, why do they constantly try to attack and restrict workers' rights, which they do? Every Tory government does that, and this one is no different. Trying to place a higher barrier for being able to strike in terms of percentage of people needing to vote than have seen many Tories elected into office, and indeed forming a government. So there's hypocrisy there.
And indeed, those numbers would have meant no Liberal Democrats being elected.
I'd also point out, Gareth, that Liberals were defending workers' rights before Labour were ever heard of, and Lib Dems will continue to do so now. And in fact, we passed a big policy motion on this at our spring conference earlier this year. But I think the Tories are not the party of working people. If they were, then why would we have a situation, which I saw this week in an article, that the £12 million worth of is it 12 million or 12 billion? I keep getting myself mixed up. Of further welfare cuts, which will hit the poorest most, and many of those that I talk about will be in work, but will be suffering in-work poverty, of which there's a lot of, and we hear very little from the Tories about that when they talk about how many jobs they've created. Why will we have a situation where charities are predicting, if these cuts go ahead, a further 40,000 children will be pushed into poverty? That will be the Tories' legacy at the end of 5 years of government.
A couple of points, yeah.
And it is a shameful legacy, and I think people will come to regret that there's no Lib Dems in this government to stop them from behaving in such a disgraceful way.
Might be a little premature to talk about the legacy of 5 years of Conservative government when they're barely 3 weeks in, but a couple of points that people have made, because you were talking about history there, Matthew. Alessia says that Mr. Matthew needs to open a full encyclopedia of the Victorian age, really, and this leads on to the point from Chris G, who says every Tory government has not restricted workers' rights. Whilst the old Liberals were defending kids being sent up chimneys, the Tories were outlawing it. So there's a bit of historical debate going on there, I think.
I think you'll find Thatcher did.
No, can
I don't think we had any chimney sweeps, child chimney sweeps in the 1990s.
No, I meant she restricted workers' rights.
Go on, how?
Well, she certainly restricted.
They crush unions.
Yeah, she She certainly endeavoured to. If you'll listen, she certainly endeavoured to try and roll back the ability of trade unions to represent their workers.
Tell me, Matthew, which part of the trade union reform of the 80s do you think was particularly bad? Was it the forcing of a democratic vote through the Electoral Reform Society rather than having bullying votes with everyone standing in the same room looking at those who might disagree? Was it the outlawing of violence on picket lines? I'm just wondering which part you felt was deleterious to workers' rights.
I'm saying to you that the idea that she or any of her successors have been for workers to be able to be properly represented without them wanting to restrict that or place the bar far higher than it should be to be able to strike and to be able to properly set out a grievance shows that the Tories don't care one hoot about workers' rights. And I think we'll leave that there.
Well, that's a load of
Can I just come in? Can I just come in?
Go on, Adam. I dread to say these words, but go on, Adam.
It's all right. Yay, I get picked. I just quickly like to touch on what Matthew says. Most of it is complete and utter nonsense. But I like the people on Twitter, except from a few, because they're irritating to me. But I just want to say about striking. About what was it you said, Matthew, about the strikes that they're raising? Go on, what was it about strikes that we're trying to do?
Yeah, I'll repeat it again for you. That we have a situation where if, and I very much hope that the Tories don't get it through and that they're stopped from doing so, but they'll be placing a far higher bar in terms of the backing that a trade union needs to be able to go out on strike than has seen many of those Tory MPs that have now formed a majority be elected on. So that just goes to show how much the Tories really care about workers' rights. They don't, and they.
Okay. This is how much they care on workers' rights. Is that this is how much they care, in the fact that they want people to get to their job during that day, but they can't because there's people in the London transport and in tubes to shut down the tubes because people are on strike. That is preventing people from getting to work, and that is why I disagree with the fact that people should be able to strike when it will affect many more people.
You don't believe in workers' rights?
Let me finish, Matthew. Let me finish, because I listen to you. Let me finish, okay? It's politeness, not like the SNP Parliament. I'm so bad, sorry about that. And also another thing is that you have the education strike as well, and there are schools having to shut down, and that was an entire day's worth of lessons. What happens if exams were coming up? What happens if those kids really needed the education? The strikes tended to be on the Wednesday, and I particularly remember that Wednesday, is that people would strike even though it was a decision taken in England, and it wasn't affecting the people in the Welsh education, and yet the teachers in Wales were still striking to help their mates over the border, helping them out to stop the Tory government doing the situation. It affected the economy. It stopped children's education for a day, and that's where I agree with raising the barrier for that to happen, and I disagree with striking altogether.
So there we have it, folks. And to be fair to Adam, he said it perfectly openly, so I have to commend him for being honest about his view. But there we have it. He does not. But he said it. This is not me making anything up. He said it. He does not believe in people's right to strike. And so there we have it. There is the Conservative.
Oh, before you continue that sentence, Matthew, before you continue that sentence, let me remind you, all of you, shush. Before you continue that sentence, Matthew, let me remind you of the disclaimer I read out at the start of every show, which is, let me just find the thing, yes, our standard disclaimer is that whilst our guests may support a party none of them speaks for or on behalf of the
no, that's fine. Okay, so there is a Conservative. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine.
Right, there is a Conservative, letting the cat out of the bag at least for him, that he doesn't believe in the right to strike and would like to see the bar raised ever higher to prevent it from doing so. If people can believe after that, even though I appreciate it doesn't necessarily represent the party, but I should imagine a lot of Tories feel like he does. And if that is the case, then that just goes to show how much the Tories really care about workers' rights.
We care about workers' rights, the fact that we want people to get to their job on time. So why should people who work on the tubes in London strike and some of them aren't even being affected anyway, which is having to close an entire tube system, meaning that people in a city... Wait a second, Matthew. In a city that has a population of 8 million and people aren't being able to get to their jobs on time or may not be able to get to their jobs...
Okay, in fact...
really affected
one sec, Adam, here's the point. Here's the point for you, Adam. The whole point of striking is, one, to withdraw your labour, and two, to cause hassle to other people. And would anybody actually listen to tube workers and railway workers if their striking didn't have any actual effect?
Right.
What will be the point in striking?
Right.
Isn't actually withdrawing the ability of people to withdraw their labour in a way that does badly affect other people so they realise and see what's going on? Wouldn't that just make the whole point of striking moribund and mean actually you as a worker don't have the ability to withdraw your labour? There's no point.
I think that's a very good point, because you need to show that there's actual human beings behind these machines and behind these making everything work. And if they go and take a sort of strike-like action, on like a Wednesday afternoon or some time that doesn't interfere with a lot of people, nobody's going to care in that respect. They're only going to watch it on the 6 o'clock news, and they're not going to stop and think about it. I think I would be annoyed if, for example, say that rail strike went on, but I still think that they've got every right to if their conditions aren't up to the mark.
Yeah, quite right.
Is this personal? Can I get?
Of course you can, Leon.
Well, Matthew, you may be surprised to hear this, but I'm a Tory, and I believe in the right to strike.
Well, then you need to speak to Adam, then, Leon. Go on, explain to him why there should be a right to strike.
Well, I imagine Leon was about to.
Actually, I wasn't.
Well, there we are then. Come on.
No, I wasn't, because I can't be bothered. Essentially, I think the reasons for why workers need a right to strike, I think they're plain and obvious. At the end, if you don't have the right to withdraw your labour, I think you're living in a pretty authoritarian.
Right, exactly right.
Oh, don't you start. What was I going to say anyway? What makes me laugh is I think most people's history of the Conservative Party starts in 1979. It doesn't go any further back than that. So I think we Tories and you Liberals have we've got an interesting relationship in history. In the 1800s, while the Tories admittedly were standing up for the landed gentry, I think they're called, the Liberals were standing up for the aristocracy. So historically speaking, you're shaking your head, but it's true. Historically speaking, you're not quite accurate. But that, as I say, everybody's history of the Conservative Party starts with Thatcher, which is a shame, really, because she's largely overrated. But on strike laws, I really don't think democratising an organisation is stopping it from doing its stuff. If they can't get the votes, then there's clearly something wrong in the organisation, and people clearly don't agree with it, otherwise they'd vote for it. I am not against, though, before you say it, I'm not against putting the threshold in general elections and whatnot. I'm not against that. I just don't really care about it. I'm on this, I'm a little bit like those people on Futurama who essentially just say, I have no strong opinion one way or the other.
I love that.
Daryl, do you have anything else to add to this one?
I don't really believe so, no.
Now, there are so many comments on this. I'm not going to get around to reading them all, I'm afraid. I've retweeted a few, but I think my finger was about to drop off. However, if it helps, just a quick selection. Atlas snubbed. Oh, there I go again. At Atlas snubbed. Why do all Tories want to eat babies? It's because they're tasty, Ben. That's why. Fricasseed with a bit of tomato sauce. Delightful.
That's not party policy.
Yeah, that's just my personal view. It's not a party one. Where are we? Henry, at Talking Henry. Care about workers' rights. What about changes to access to work? James Arrowsmith, strikes are about raising problems with your work and forcing the powers that be to act upon those issues. Sam Lamar, of course they're going to be disruptive, but they should at least have the support of the majority of their members. And just to remind you that
Always have the support of the majority of the country.
the post-show poll is now available on the website at spectrumdebates.com. If you'd like to tell me which of these four people down here you have preferred tonight, please do go there and
They never vote for us anyway. So.
We're going to finish. I'm just going to ask if any of you has any final comments or any final thing you'd like to say about this topic or anything else we've discussed tonight.
I have one thing to say.
Leon.
Purely because it's been requested by Matthew Wilson. You know nothing, Jon Snow. There we go.
Excellent. As someone who's never watched Game of Thrones, I always picture the Channel 4 newsreader. Matthew.
I just have one quick thing to say, which is on that one of those tweets that we just received from one of our lovely viewers there, in regards to saying that a union should have the majority support of its members before striking. Does this government have the majority support of everyone in this country?
Does it have majority of seats in Parliament?
I mean, that's different.
Due to our moribund voting system, yeah.
That everyone voted for in a referendum, but okay. Right, Daryl, anything else you'd like to say to finish this, or final comments on the show?
So, yeah.
I would just say clap to a better future.
Fair enough. And Adam, in under 30 seconds, please, because I think the tunnel of light is taking you, I'm assuming, to hell behind you.
I would like to say that thank you for inviting me on this debate, and Matthew, you always entertain me while I'm on this debate. I've also got a quick comment. It was very upsetting for one person that there were no females on today's panel. So Lily, get your act together and get back on. But otherwise, it's all right. I very much enjoyed today's debate. But I have to completely and honestly disagree with Matthew. Is that he's now trying to promote that the Tories don't support striking. I want to confirm something right here, right now. Okay, I'll be breaking news. I'll give you that now. I take the view that striking is wrong when there are tens of thousands, to hundreds of thousands, to millions of people disrupted more than the people who are striking. Don't let me finish, Matthew. Let me finish. When people's lives are disrupted by the fact that the unions are taking on. Matthew, can you shut up for 1 second? You know, it's not always Christmas when you're talking to a turkey. But I just want to say, if the unions try to control, the unions are very controlling. You know, they've made the leadership elections in 2007 when it came to Labour. They got Ed Miliband in power. That was the unions aren't as very friendly as you're trying to make them out as they are, Matthew. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I do not support striking when they are disrupting the lives of millions of people.
Okay, thank you all very much indeed. Just 2 points to finish on. First of all, as a Conservative councillor, I've been on strike before now. Not as a councillor, while I was a teacher. And final tweet to read here. First of all, Chris G, a Tory saying Thatcher is overrated. Someone passed me the smelling salts.
I know.
And the Spectrum Debate Ministry of Truth at S_debate_news. News, Leon French distances himself from Thatcher. Camera pans to Gareth. He couldn't distance himself. She touched him once, and she did.
Well, that's disturbing.
Margaret Thatcher rubbed my chest.
Sorry.
Just thought I'd leave you with that point.
Well,
Leon.
of course, Gareth, we'd all love to do that. But anyway.
And on that bombshell. Good night. Thank you all very much for taking part. Thank you all for tweeting us and so on. Do vote in the post-show poll. We have a lineup already building up for next week and the week after. I would love to see more of you on this show. Thank you very much all. Thank you to my wonderful guests. Thank you very much to Adam. Thank you very much to Daryl. Thank you very much to Matthew. And thank you very much to Leon. You've all been great. You're the real stars of this show.
Oh, don't patronize me.
And we'll see you very soon. Good night.